You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Global Trade This Week has landed, my friends. I am your co-host, Doug Draper. And on the other side, 40 minutes from the ocean is my good friend, Pete Mento. Pete, how you doing?
I'm doing good, bud. You know, I live in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, not in Mountain West. Am I saying it right? Intermountain West, which I am still convinced is a incredibly elaborate prank that you and Keenan play on me. But hey, listen, props to you for at least trying. I'm doing good, pal. I'm doing good. It's starting to get cold here. Before you were on, I had my old man toque on that I wear because I'm bald and I have no hair on my head. Yeah. So I have my little scrunchy cap that I wear. But I switched to my Red Sox hat because they're nowhere near the playoffs, and I hate baseball right now because of it. So there you have it, Doug.
Nice.
I'm actually see you in Boston, apparently.
Yes. Well, thanks for that segue. I have to, the beauty of this show, Pete, is that we can go off a little bit and talk about things that are super important to us, like family. Yeah. And I want to let our audience know that my daughter is a rower at the University of Kansas, is been selected to go row one boat. KU is one boat that's been invited, 8 girls. They're going to Head of the Charles this coming weekend, which if you're into rowing is a pretty big deal. And you being from Boston have kind of talked about some of the craziness that goes on out there.
Yeah, not just being from Boston, Doug, being a Harvard alumni. So there's a bizarre. Harvard is not fun. So you went to KU, Rock, Chalk, whatever, Hawk, I don't know. Yeah. And my undergrad, I went to boat school, and I would say that both of us have a lot of cool stories about fun things that we did, right? Like we went to parties, we had fun, we made lifelong friends. We have stories that we can tell that people be envious. Like, oh, that sounds like a really good time. That doesn't happen at Harvard. Harvard is a place where you go, you're broke, you're miserable. You study all the time. It is a no fun zone. And the people that go there are drastically boring. So, and I went there, so I'll own it, right? But a couple of times a year, really fun stuff happens. So those times would be the Harvard Yale game. It's a lot of fun. Hasty pudding, a lot of fun. Bean pot, which is a local hockey tournament we have with all the Boston colleges. A lot of fun. But peaking above them all, my friend, without question, Head of the Charles. And the reason for that is everyone tends to find their, they find their groovy shoes, man. Like they find their party hats. They remove the stick from their posterior and decide to have a good time. So there's people day drinking. The people that row crew they don't get to go and see a lot of it. It's not like one of those things where you go someplace and it's a really big deal a lot, from what I understand. Like you don't usually go someplace. So you have thousands of people that are coming to watch hundreds of races with hundreds of boats from all over the world. And it's just this gathering of like-minded people who really get excited about it. And then the other 90% of the people are just folks who want an excuse to get hammered on the Charles River. Yeah. And I fall in the latter. So it's a whole lot of fun, Doug. I hope you have a beautiful day. I'm looking forward to seeing you. We will raise our cups to the Jayhawks.
It'll be great. And now I think it's 1,800 entrants. So if you and I are just we like to row, we can sign up. But as far as the collegiate aspect of it, you have to be invited. So that's what makes this one super special. And to me personally, my daughter is selected as far as the top 8 that are going in the boat. So let's add another 0 to that scholarship money, Kansas, and then I think we'll be good. So
I don't sleep, as you know, and I got up early today and I said, I'm just going to go to the gym, and I finished my walk-in, and then I went to go get on the weight machines because I'm at the point now where I can't do free weights. I'm afraid I'll hurt myself if I'm alone. Mm-hmm. So I got to use the machines, and they've got one of those rowing machines there, Doug. And I thought, should I? It's like, Christ, no, nothing about this looks like fun to me. So all the love in the world to your daughter, man, for having the athleticism and the cardio to want to do something like that. God bless her.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. So let's flip from my personal family life over to things that are related to global trade, specifically this week. So, Pete, kick it. There you go. That is one hell of a transition. So I'll let you roll with it.
Is it though? Was it,
That
Doug?
is. Yes.
Was it a great transition? Okay, buddy.
I thought so.
Got some fun topics this week. The first, my friend Ryan and I were we were pitching a company that we're thinking about going to work for, and he was talking to me about export controls, and he said, "Have you read this stuff about America's attempts to try to keep technology out of the hands of China for fabricating semiconductors?" And I'm like, how long have you known me, dude? Like, we've worked together for 28 years or something. I don't have a life. Have I been reading about it? I lay awake at night thinking about it. Yes, I've been reading about it, right? So for those of you who are not up on this, the United States has taken sort of these two direct parallel paths. Number one, we're going to start making our own fabrication plants to make advanced semiconductors, which everybody knows about. And the second one is we're going to do everything we can to keep the advanced technology out of the hands of Chinese manufacturers so that they can't catch up with where we're planning on being in, say, 8 to 10 years when we're finally making these chips. So the new regulations that have to do with export controls are very, very stringent, Doug. And as normally happens, companies that are involved in manufacturing these products have sort of hit the brakes. They've said, until we understand the regulation, until all of us are very comfortable with what's going on, we're just not going to sell anything to China for a little while. And that's, so like my dad, when he taught me how to drive, he said, no one ever got into a fiery auto accident driving 2 miles an hour, Pete. So just, it's okay to go a little slow. It's all right, right? I mean, I'm sure he's wrong. I'm sure somebody was going 2 miles an hour and got slammed into by something, but whatever. My dad wasn't a very smart man. The point I'm trying to make here is that these two parallel things happening at once from the outside look like a great way to deter Chinese growth in semiconductors. But I'm wondering if it's possible if that could backfire. And here's what I'm wondering. Tell me what you think, Doug.
Yeah.
What if no one buying Chinese semiconductors and no one supporting Chinese semiconductor production and us not buying it from them ends up flooding our competitors with cheaper semiconductors? Because if we're not buying them, supply and demand would say that they've got to lower the price. So that would allow our competition to have greater access to these things, I would think. And as such, it would allow them to produce at a lower cost. So are we giving our competition, our global competition, the opportunity to source these semiconductors at a lower cost because of this? And ultimately, are we going to create less of a market for the export of American semiconductors because other countries are just going to simply use the semiconductors available to them at a lower price? Don't know. Don't know if I'm right. I think time will tell. But all these political ads I see about how we're going to take back the semiconductor industry, people need to remember it's going to take a decade. And in those 10 years, there's going to be a lot of this political jockeying and international relations jockeying going back and forth. But
yeah, I don't know what to think about that one. It's interesting. I don't think we're in a position to really play our cards until we have the infrastructure. Yes, it's been there. We talked about the CHIPS Act, kind of made fun of that acronym a couple of shows ago. But it's almost like we're calling their bluff, and it makes me nervous when we call their bluff with China. So I don't know. People are going to consume what they consume, and the things that they consume and want have chips in them. And so calling the bluff and having the parallel reciprocation, cut that off. I don't know. I just think that America is not quite there yet. We start playing our hand because it's the midterm elections and yada, yada, yada. And it's going to blow up in our face or just go off, and nobody's going to care about it in 2 months when the election season is over. So I don't know. We always talk about not being political, but that's my take.
Yeah. Doug, is Colorado like a toss-up political state for anything? Do you have like any important Congress? Like, are there any congressional or senatorial elections that are happening there that are a big deal?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. So
because I'm my life is hell right now. I'm just trying to watch Modern Family reruns with Mrs. Trey Geek and down a bottle of wine. And every 5 minutes, it's some Senate candidate telling me why they're better than the other Senate candidate. Yeah. And I've had it. I would be happy to just have a dog food commercial at this point. Like anything but these never ending political ads are making me crazy, buddy.
Yeah, no, we got them out here. I kind of long for the days from watching the news where a car advertisement seems like every thing on the nightly news is selling a car. I want that back because you're spot on with the political ads.
It's politics, pharmaceuticals, and then here in New Hampshire right now we have a lot of, for whatever reason, like home improvement stuff, like get your bath redone, bath fitters and windows. Man, people be selling some windows up here in New Hampshire. The winter is pretty bad, but I've had it with the political stuff. I'll be happy when this election's over with. Yeah. I'm voting for you, Doug. I'm voting for you for Senate.
Thank you. That's interesting because I'm not running for anything, but I appreciate your vote.
Yeah, well, I think you're going to do a great job, pal. So what do you got for us? What's your first topic, buddy?
I think this is related to robots, not drones, so don't worry about that. This is related to robots and the final mile delivery. Robots are starting to get scrapped. There was an article I read that there's a trend that this final mile delivery and the robots is just kind of not there anymore. So FedEx had this research and development group, Roxo. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. ROXO. How would you pronounce that?
Can I just time out you for a second, Doug? You know where all this happened, right?
Yeah, New Hampshire.
Yeah, and do you know physically where it happened? Do you have any idea how close where all of it was to my home?
Across the street?
I can go out onto my balcony overlooking the Amoskeag River right now, and I can see where this was all happening from
really?
Maybe a quarter of a mile. I can see the buildings from the balcony of my penthouse here in Manchester.
Wow. Well, your input is going to be stellar. I'm just wonder how many of them fell into the water or tipped over on their side like a turtle that couldn't get up. But that's the second half.
Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, since was it Roxo? What's the correct pronunciation?
I don't know. I just know that DECA was the company who was involved out of Manchester. And there's some creepy, skunk worksy sort of government contractor that we all love. We're so happy they're here. Yeah. They're the coolest company ever. But go ahead and tell your side of the story and I'll tell you my weird side of it.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, the press release that FedEx came out with was, although robotics and automation are key pillars of our innovation strategy, Roxo, if that's the correct pronunciation, did not meet the necessary near-term value requirements. And the answer to that is, no shit, because FedEx is looking to focus on core competency, which is to make money and deliver packages. So it doesn't surprise me that they're kind of ditching some of this peripheral things to really focus on their business. The forward lean on this one is, is that Amazon killed their Scout program, SCOUT. That was automated delivery. And delivery robots, they're just years or decades away. I mean, I had no clue that it was right across your street, so to speak. So it'll be good. But I don't know, man. It just, it's specifically to the FedEx one, 8-mile radius up to 100 pounds. Now that's better than a drone. But I mean, that barely gets out of the warehouse area, right? 8 miles, you got to get the hell out of there to find the houses that it's going to deliver to. So, I think robots are best for behind the scenes. Get them behind the curtain and let them work the warehouses and the automation to move things through, but not to make that delivery to. So move the products through the warehouse. I just thought of this beat. Move them through, not to. So scrap the delivery, and just move the product through the warehouse. So automation, I love it. Robots, bring it on. Keep them in the warehouse. Don't worry about trying to drive them down the street and deliver a package to your house.
Well, unfortunately, my friend, you're a little bit off how these were supposed to work. This is going to be fun for me to talk just a little bit about. So there's this guy that started a company named Dean Kamen here in New Hampshire. And he's kind of our Granite State Elon Musk. No other way to describe him. And he's a much celebrated son of the Granite State. We're all kind of in awe of the guy. So when he was a teenager, he invented the auto injector. So I think the story goes that he saw his grandmother in the hospital and she was in a lot of pain and they kept having to give her injections. So he's the one that did the button pushing thing where you push the button and it gives you a little bit more of your drugs. He invented that when he was like, I want to say like 12 or 13 and got a patent on it. And then he invented a number of wheelchairs that allow people that are in various degrees of not having any use of their limbs to be able to go upstairs in wheelchairs, downstairs in wheelchairs. Like some of these wheelchairs go 30, 40 miles an hour. They're able to lift you up so that you're in a standing position. It's incredible. So he also invented the Segway. And those were built here in Manchester. All those Razor scooters and everything, the underlying component of the patent to them belongs to him. So the idea of a battery-powered wheeled conveyance, every time someone builds one of those, he's getting more money. So the guy's like outrageously wealthy. And he has this, like I said, it's like a skunk works here in Manchester in one of the old giant mills. No one's really sure what's going on in there. Like, I don't know if they're practicing the next video of the moon landing or like if they're in there, cloning aliens or what, but things come out of there every once in a while. So we'd be driving around Manchester and you'd see this white R2D2 looking thing going up and down the streets. And like, what's old Dean working on now? Like, is this some sort of robotic assassin? And what you eventually learn is it was this FedEx program where they were going to solve what they saw was a huge problem. So the FedEx truck drives up to one house. One FedEx driver gets out, sometimes two during the holidays or UPS, what have you. What if the FedEx truck drove someplace and this army of drones gets out, like they're stacked on top of each other and they roll out and they're able to go and deliver these packages because they can go upstairs, they can come downstairs, they can go around. And then when they're done, they come back to the mothership. And then that mothership goes, right? The idea was, could you do that? But from what I understand from reading all the articles, it wasn't cost effective. There were too many problems with consistency of getting the package into the home. Like every home is different. Where the package goes in every home is different. It was hard to get consistency. And then through years and years of putting money into the program, they just weren't seeing the outcome that they want. I don't think it's dead though. I just think it's not the right time. And I know you're feeling about autonomous things, Doug. You've got a real problem. I don't know if you got into a fist fight with some robot somewhere or a drone or something and you just never really recovered, but you got some deep, deep hate for robotics, man. And
it's not hate, it's called reality. And fine. You can play around with it, but the likelihood, anyway, I want to keep the show moving forward. And
I like it when you get angry about them.
I'm not going to get angry. It's just, come on, seriously, really? Let's just move on and make some deliveries. Get out of your truck, check the box, and let's move on, right?
Okay. All right, man.
Anyway, but speaking of
whether
moving
you like
on,
it or not, the future is coming for you, Doug. The future's coming for you.
Yeah, it is. Let's halftime. What am I trying to say here? So
halftime,
and then I
brought
lost
to you by our friends at Cap Logistics. As always, we're very excited to bring you this show. We couldn't do it without our friends at Cap Logistics. We couldn't produce it. We couldn't bring it to you. We couldn't bring you this content week after week. We want to thank them. We hope that if you have the opportunity, you'll check them out at caplogistics.com. And this is the part of the show where Doug and I talk about whatever we want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, Doug, who's going first this week?
I'll go first because I think your topic is.
Okay.
I'm fully expecting some visuals of stuff you're going to pull out from your.
I don't know.
Back of your chair.
We'll see.
We'll see. Anyway, so this goes along with the theme of the U.S. News and World Reports. This is a collegiate thing. I got two kids in college. As you have one there and one coming up. So it struck me as odd that I read. It didn't strike me as odd. It caught my attention that. The school with the greatest endowment has traditionally been Harvard, your alma mater, and the latest number is like $53 billion in their endowment, making sure things move in the right direction. But there is a school out there in the great state of Texas that has surpassed for this year, and it is, in fact, the University of Texas. How the heck?
Wow.
How the heck do they have more of an endowment than an Ivy League institution like Harvard? And it all has to do with oil and land. So basically, what I had done some research on, 2.1 million acres that the university owns. There's 250 different companies that are pulling oil out of their 2.1 million. So when oil is expensive, and as it is right now, they're just basically printing money. So as of, I don't know if it's right this very second, but the university out there that has the largest endowment, they did it old school Texas style with getting into oil business, and University of Texas has surpassed Harvard because of that unique aspect of how they manage their endowment. So anyway, it's the oil business that's pushing them over the top.
When I was a boy, Doug, the University of Texas was not a good school. I'm going to say it out loud, right? It was just not a good school. And my family, the men all went to A&M, which was an engineering school. And they used to have jokes about guys that went to A&M, like how stupid they were, you know? But Texas was not a good school. I said it out loud. It just wasn't, like, you didn't hope and pray your kids went to UT. That all changed when they started a rule about how you had to have a particularly high GPA to get in. And that came along with a heck of a large amount of money to go to school there. So the higher echelons of GPA, not only were they going to get in, but they were going to get a real significant amount of that tuition and paid for as well. And it suddenly became real competitive to go to UT. So it was pretty hard to get in. That happened after I was a young man. But now it's tough to go to UT. Yeah. And they've got a lot of great graduate programs. It's a great school. And because of that, you've got a lot of very wealthy people that have graduated from UT, that live in Austin, that have worked in the tech sector, worked in energy, that have left them a lot of money, as well as a lot of people who died and left what at the time felt like completely worthless land because you couldn't drill for oil on it. But guess what? You can frack it. And there's plenty of oil underneath it now. And like you said, they're making that money. So that's amazing, man. I mean, utterly amazing, the kind of money they're making out of that. Yeah. So
your comment about A&M. So I lived in Lubbock, Texas. My dad was a professor at Texas
where I was born.
Tech. Yep.
My mom went to Texas Tech. I was born in Lubbock.
Okay. And he would come home with, it would say 101 Aggie jokes. And it was a book that basically just, ripped on Aggies. And I think you could not publish that book today and still have a job, or the publishing company would be pretty much out of business. I probably have one somewhere. But anyway, when you said A&M, I'm thinking 101 Aggie jokes. And let's just say, thank God that was printed in the late 70s and early 80s, because that book wouldn't fly in 2022.
Oh, yeah. My mom was a proud Red Raider, man. And, she went to high school in Lubbock, the whole bit. So when I was born there. So I would rather take a beating from the University of Texas football team armed with baseball bats than ever have to go back to Lubbock, Texas. There's a fabulous song by Mac Davis called "Happiness is Lubbock, Texas in My Rearview Mirror." Mm-hmm. And I detest West Texas, and I never want to go back. So anyway, my halftime.
Yeah, fire away.
My halftime. I broke my pact with Apple this last go around. I got one of them fancy Samsung flipping phones, and I'm having fun with it. But like everybody else, when you leave one platform, you have to get used to doing everything differently. And one of the things I've had to get used to is these stupid chargers. I have a box, Doug, of all of the electronics that I have bought going back what feels like eons. Now, Amy doesn't really collect things like I do, right? She has lots of shoes. She has clothes she's never worn, right? But that's not nearly as desperate and sad as the fact that I still have the charger for my first Palm Pilot. but I don't have the Palm Pilot. I have chargers for Nokia phones from like 1998, and I don't know why. I have more electronic crap laying around my house, phones and chargers and such, in plastic bags. Why do I still keep them, Doug? Why do I have them around? What is the whole point of this? And what's really funny is the box that they're in, it's like an archaeological dig. Over time, the farther down you go, the earlier in the years it goes. The stuff on top is still like, pre-lightning Apple chargers. And then you go a little farther and probably my Motorola Razr stuff, Palm Pilot things, a couple old busted Palm Pilots. Go down a little further. I got some iPods in there. I've got my iRiver MP3 players. Go a little bit farther down. Like, it is the saddest collection of crap that I have ever seen. And I don't know what to do with all of it. And I'm sure Keenan's back there munching on Gorp, drinking his kombucha, saying, well, you should probably go and hand this off to somebody so they can recycle it. Shut up, Keenan. I'm not doing it, because I'm convinced that at some point this stuff will have some kind of collector's value, which I'm sure is wrong. But, I just can't seem to part with this crap, Doug. Do you find yourself in a similar situation, or are you a better man than I am?
Well, no, it's in bags. And it's funny you said bags, because it's the small bag to say this is the individual charger with the phone. You got then you put it in a big bag or box. And I bet 80% of our listeners, maybe not the younger generation, but if they're our age or whatever, they have the same thing. It's a box full of shit that you're never going to get rid of. But you think maybe there'll be a purpose for it, so you might as well just keep it, because it's really small. You just put it under your bed or in that drawer that you never open, and everything's good, and it's out of sight, out of mind. So I love it.
Yeah, I have remote controls for TVs that I haven't owned for a dozen years. What's wrong with me, Doug? What's wrong with me?
That one's weird.
What is wrong with me? Yeah, I was going to open my desk here and pull out stuff, but some of it's, why do I have Apple headphones that still have this thing on the end? When was the last time I had an Apple phone that you still plugged in the headphones for? I think it's been a very long time. I have a Sunto watch, right? An old Sunto watch. And here's the charger for it. I haven't worn this watch in 10 years, man. I don't.
It's right there at your desk, like literally an arm's length away.
Yeah. Oh, this whole desk is full of crap that I don't. I should probably just let somebody come in here while I'm at work one day and just get rid of everything, except for my passport and my guns. Just leave everything the way it is. All right, Doug. So that leads us off to the second half. Thank you again for everyone at Cap Logistics giving us an opportunity to chat about things that we see that are going on and what we think is going to happen. And I guess with that, I have the first one. Is that right, Doug? I'm the second one here.
Yeah, that's cool. Yep. I think that's it. Yep. I did the intro. So yeah, that's right.
Yep. So we're facing down another COVID lockdown right now in China. And this one is for about 1 million people. So to me, I look at everything through the scope of my little sad world. So I live in New Hampshire, and New Hampshire has about 1.2 million people in the whole state. And the idea that there would be a lockdown of all of us where we're not allowed to leave our house. We have to have food delivered. One person can leave every 3 days and go and buy food. I think about, that level of lockdown. I'm like, we would be shooting people. Like you would have to, in this state, there would be a revolution. Like that would not happen here. In China, they're going through it again because of the zero COVID policy. And this time it's happening in a city where a significant number of iPhones are made. So why does that get my attention? It gets my attention because it goes back to these supply chain issues. Around the same time last year, Doug, if you remember, we were having major port cities shut down because of zero COVID. A few months later, around Christmas time, same thing. Major port cities, Shanghai at that point, being shut down, and its effect on supply chains. Now we're seeing its effect on major consumer production. Now, a lot of iPhones are going to be made in India, which is wonderful, but Apple is a company that really drives markets, drives GDP growth, and it drives, dare I say, fashion. And not being able to have that innovation and that fashion out in the marketplace, it will have a long-term effect, not just on GDP, but on the growth of that industry and what happens next. And it's happening in a country that everything is being made in. I keep saying it, Doug. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. You need to have a resilient supply chain. Just in time cannot be overcome without some just in case. And if people don't start realizing that this isn't going away, that this zero COVID attitude in China is here to stay, we're going to all be dealing with these long-term supply chain issues for decades to come. You've got to find ways to make your supply chain more resilient, and that's going to mean finding alternatives to where you produce your goods.
Yeah. Well, heck, we've been talking about that. What you just said was the fundamental reason that you and I got together in 2020 to talk about you better have a plan B right before COVID. So it's funny that 2.5 years later, it's still relevant and we're still talking about it. The thing that just listening now with a communist party that's all about manipulation and control and manipulating their people to maintain control. So here's my take on this, maybe my conspiracy theory, but the leadership has reestablished itself over there. Let's manipulate our people and throw them in lockdown with our no COVID zero policy in order to control, slow down, and impact the supply chain over to the consumer base that needs to eat and consume and be fashion mongers. So I was just thinking about that when you were talking, Pete, that yeah, that's going to impact things. Is it by design in a very unusual way? Maybe a little doom and gloom on my part, but I think there is some realization that manipulate the people to maintain control. That's, I don't know if it's the fundamental communistic way, but it sure sounds like it.
Well, it also doesn't hurt that when you have periods of scary political change or reasserting things politically, if you're able to control people's movements and the such,
yeah,
doesn't hurt. But, you know, again, we always try to avoid politics, geo or otherwise, but this is one where, you know, the impacts of the supply chain, it's happening again. You know, it's happening again, man. I drove across the northern border into Canada on Friday. No one asked me for a COVID card. It was great. And I felt like it was 1988, man. Like, hey, I'm going to Quebec and no one's asking me for it. Oh, my passport. Okay. So did that. But, you know, it was great. But here we are, we're still in a reality where America's largest, you know, exporter to our economy for production goods is still dealing with shutting down whole cities over a virus that the rest of the world appears to be moving on from. And I think that's something we should be paying a lot of attention to, Doug.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, bud, take us home.
Well, yeah. So supply chain and energy, those have been common themes in the last couple of weeks. Probably the last couple of months, to be honest with you. So this one is about liquefied natural gas and natural gas state, natural gas in general. So the spot market for natural gas has just been on a roller coaster ride. And there's I'm going to call it the unit of measure, right? But it's X dollars. We talked about X dollars per barrel as far as the cost of oil. In natural gas, it is per million British thermal units, right? It's like an MBTHU something or other, but let's just call it the unit of measure. In August, it was $84 per million British thermal unit. And just today, it was down to 40. 2 weeks ago, it was about 57. It's going up and down, and they're saying that part of it is that the warmer weather in Europe is keeping it a little bit lower. But you know what? Warmer weather isn't going to last forever in the winter, and then it's going to spike back up. So my whole point with this thing is that the uncertainty favors the supplier. So 2 months ago was at 84. Today it's at 40 because Europe is a little warmer than normal and they're not consuming as much. You got a war in Ukraine. You got the pipelines coming in that are being affected and impacted. And so when things get scarce and when natural gas is needed, you're going to see the spot market just explode. The piece that really this is honed in on is that whenever the cost of the commodity is expensive, you can charge whatever you want related to the transportation of those goods. And I'm afraid what's going to happen, Pete, is because it's a spot market, there's uncertainty. If I own a vessel, and there's not that many of them out there, that can actually transport liquefied natural gas, and I'm wondering what's going to happen, I'm just going to sit idle because I'm going to wait until see who needs it the most and who's going to pay the most. So that's kind of taken inventory out of the market. And while I just wait and see who can pay me the most, I'm going to turn it left or right. So I think natural gas prices, my whole point of this, Pete, they're going to continue to be volatile because it is a spot market. And the ones that control the transportation are the ones that are going to get rich on it. And they're going to withhold the delivery of these items to try to find, or delivery of this product, to try to find the highest bidder and who's going to pay the most money. And it's going to get pretty wonky here as the winter continues to evolve. So look out. It's not going to get any cheaper. It's going to get volatile, scarce, and expensive.
You're right, Doug. When we look at these sorts of markets, we're speculating. So we're not looking at how things are today. We're looking at where they're going to be in 30, 60, 90, 120 days. And right now we're on the cusp of the cold winter months. So moving this stuff in what are just gigantic hydrogen bombs. That's what an LNG tanker is. It's the most dangerous floating thing on the water. It's a very expensive means of conveyance that you're going to take your time. If you think there's going to be a market that's open to you, you can let it sit idle and you can wait. Now, what you're not going to do is use it as a floating warehouse, but you will let it sit idle and then buy it and sell it while it's underway on the water. And someone's going to make a crap ton of money on it. Now, a lot of these vessels are owned by the people that are selling it, but a lot aren't. And a lot of the infrastructure that is necessary to move it from the port to where it's actually going to be distributed, it's scarce. There's not a lot of it, man. We've talked about this. In the US, there was one major port and they had a fire and it slowed down exports of natural gas over the world. Into Europe, you've got Germany, basically, parts of Poland. There's not a lot of major natural gas LNG ports where we can move this stuff through. The entire infrastructure is not ready for the demand. These ships are going to be in a similar situation to what you had for container ships once that price begins to go up, and the people that own those vessels are going to make a lot of money. You're 100% right, Doug. You're absolutely 100% spot on.
Yeah. That's all I got this week, my man.
Yeah, all right. So thank you, Doug, as always, for your gripping insights into global trade this week. I had a lot of fun. Sorry I couldn't be here again last week, right? It was last week I couldn't be on?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It was last week.
Yeah. And everybody had to suffer through another Keenan input on it. It's like, I swear, it's like the NFL right now with all these third and second string quarterbacks being on every Sunday, and Doug's got to play twice as hard. You know, you're talking about a Hall of Famer out there on the field who's just got to compensate for the lack of talent behind center. But Doug, you always do it, man. I really appreciate it. And, thank you for stepping in, Keenan. You know, we always do appreciate it. It always frustrates me that so many people say kind things about your input, whatever. But we do appreciate that and all the hard work that you do. And we appreciate all of our friends at Cap Logistics for making this happen. Doug, look forward to seeing you.
Yeah.
Go KU. And again, we'll see you all again next week in another great edition of Global Trade This Week. Thanks, everybody.
Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk.